Okay, just a brief video on so it's just some things to pay attention to in the introduction section of the DSM-5 TR when you're reading it. So let's see. There's that opening paragraph has a couple nuggets in there about the purpose of the DSM's clinical guide for diagnosis of mental disorders. Um, and by the way, you'll hear me. I'll probably say this in more than one place, but it's coming up now, so I'll just make sure I say it here. Um, you'll hear me refer to these things as conditions or illnesses, and you'll hear me when we get to trauma. You'll hear me talk about, again, purely my opinion, but as about that we should be thinking of trauma as an injury versus a disorder or even an illness. So, but that's for later. Just, I think the main thing is that the idea of disorders. I'm not a big fan of disorders as a term. Um, won't go on for like 20 minutes about why. I prefer conditions or illness or injury, and I think it's more productive to think about these diagnoses in that way. But anyway, so that's just a quick aside. You're not going to be tested on that. It's just something to think about as you go into the chapter. The DSM-5 revision process. So you don't have to read through it. I definitely would read it. Let me know if you have any questions about it. But and there may be a question or two that would be easy to answer in an exam. But the section on DSM revision process, proposals for revisions, DSM field trials, you just want a working familiarity with that. Same thing with the public and professional review and expert review and final approval. These are more just a little bit of background on how the DSM is put together. These aren't like a deep part of the class. There's definitely things we'll focus on much more. I would read it, just have a basic familiarity with it. I may pull a question or two because I think it's noteworthy, like to have a basic understanding of how the DSM is put together. But you don't. That's not a central focus. Um, Likewise, the iterative revision process. Now, when we get into same thing with grouping in disorders. This is more have a working familiarity with it. So read it. Let me know if you have any questions. Combining developmental and lifespan conditions. Now, the one thing I will say that is good to sort of think about as you're reading these couple of pages here is how the DSM is laid out, and because some of that feeds to how I lay what conditions I selected sections I selected to focus on for our course here, and how I laid them out, which I'm happy to talk to you about more. So just think about that as you're reading it. Harmonization with ICD-11, the International Classification of Disease. I may have a question or in the exam about that. It's nothing you have to memorize or know deeply. Just want you to have a working understanding of what the ICD is and how the DSM is harmonized with it and why that's important in terms of making sure behavioral health conditions or disorders, whatever you want to call them, are part of the larger disease classification system that's used globally. Okay, so actually I'm going to make this a two-parter. I'm going to pause there, okay?